how many leaders talked about when they were really struggling during COVID? I went, at the beginning of COVID, I called a friend of mine. We had to pivot our organization. Because we made most of our money from in-person events. And I called a friend of mine who's active duty military. And I said, how do you compartmentalize your emotions so you can stay mission focused? Because I gotta stay mission focused. I don't have time to worry about what's going on. And he gave me a very stern warning. He said, you can't. He said, no one can compartmentalize their emotions. He said, at best we can do it for a short period of time, but every single one of us will suffer the trauma of combat. He says, the hard part is you may not suffer it in the moment, you may suffer it 4, 5, or 6 months later after you've been home already. He says, so the stern warning is you're gonna suffer the trauma of COVID at some point. And I called all my A-type personality friends and said, we're gonna be hit, there's no avoiding it, no matter how strong we think we are, it's gonna hit us, and we all made a deal to call each other if we started to struggle. And sure enough, one by one, 4, 5, 6 months into COVID, the phone started to ring and people were really struggling. And we all made a deal that we never cry alone. If you have to cry, you call somebody. That was the deal we made with each other. And sure enough, almost on schedule, about 4 or 5 months in, I started to go through my depression. Did struggle to recognize it, right? Was afraid to call it depression because, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. I don't have depression. I don't want to be diagnosed, right? But that's what it was. I was suffering trauma from COVID. And one of the first things I did was talk to my team. Well, actually, the first thing I did was I called my active military friend and said, what are your symptoms when you suffered the trauma of And he answered my question. He said, well, my sleep pattern gets really screwed up. He said, I go to bed really late for no reason, and I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. And I was like, yep. And he's like, I don't really want to talk to anybody. I become really antisocial, and I'm definitely not asking anybody for help. And I was like, yep. And he's like, and I'm unproductive. He says, I'll have an unproductive day. And he goes, that's okay. I'll rationalize it. That's okay. You're fine. You've been busy. It's okay. And then I'll have another and another and another. And I'll keep trying to hide it. And I was like, yep. And that's when I realized I was in it. And so one of the first things I did was we had an all hands team, as we always do. We had one of our company all hands meetings. I said, I'm going through it, guys. I said, I'm really struggling hard. I said, my sleep pattern's off. I'm not motivated. I'm struggling to ask for help. I'm going through this. And I just need you to all be a little patient with me. I'm figuring it out. I'm sorting it out. I'm asking for help. But I'm not going to be very good right now. And I just need you, as a team, I need you to be patient with me. That I did that to my team made it possible for them to do that to me. If I had pretended that I was happy throughout all of it, I would have put pressure on everybody who was struggling to pretend that they were being happy. And the worst part about that as a leader is then how can I help if I don't know? And we make the mistake very often that when somebody's high performing that they're fine, because some people, the way they manage stress is to double down at work. So their performance will actually be through the roof, and they're struggling really hard. So performance is no indication of someone's stress. And so I think when the ability to be vulnerable is one of the greatest and most difficult leadership lessons any of us can learn. But it is so important to building trust when people see us as human, because it allows them to be human too.